Last spring, a former Westover student of ours who teaches now at Yale every spring term and is associated with the Whitney Humanities Center there, suggested that I attend an event that was part of the Yale Shakespeare program. It was called Slamlet, and it featured a British spoken word artist and Yale's Teeth Slam poets who made good on their promise that night to take the immortal bard by storm by performing both original works and Shakespeare as slam poetry. Having never attended anything like this before, I didn't know what I was in for at all, but I so much enjoyed myself that night that after the event was over, I sought out one of the members, one of the slam poets, Ifeanyi Awachi, and asked her if they would consider coming to Westover. They very graciously agreed to do so, and the result is that we have them here with us this morning. They will be telling us something about what they do, and then they'll be doing it. They are billed as the premier slam poetry team at Yale. Will you join me now in welcoming Teeth Slam Poets?
Well, hello, ladies. How are you guys? Good. It's so good to see you. We just arrived a couple minutes ago and toured the grounds. It's beautiful. You all are beautiful. It's great to be here. Thank you for having us. So I'm Ifeanyi. I met Bruce, your teacher, or former teacher Bruce, this past spring, and I'm part of Teeth Slam Poets, which, as you just heard, is Yale's slam poetry team. I want you to meet the rest of the members real fast.
I'm David.
Hi, I'm Becky.
Sean.
Audrey.
Yeah, and we have a couple more members back at Yale, but these are the people who really wanted to come see you guys. So they're my favorite in the group. Slam poetry is not like the poetry that you may have read for class or read on your own. It's poetry it's original poetry written by anyone, anybody can do it, and it's poetry that's performed. And slam, you may hear about spoken word poetry, which is basically any poetry that's performed, but the thing about slam is that we also compete. So we go to these things called poetry slams, and you get together with your team and perform a couple of poems, and there are judges who rank your poem, and the team with the most points at the end wins. The thing is, though, the most important thing about slams is audience participation. That's the most important thing for you guys to know about slam. So we've heard that here at the Yellow Nunnery, you guys have seen some really famous poets, right? And you're taught that, the polite way to be an audience for them is to just sit, be very quiet, I see you have your hands clasped in your lap. That's really wonderful. That's really wonderful. But at slams, you basically do the opposite. We don't want you to be quiet while we're doing poems. If you hear something you like during the poem, would anybody like to demonstrate what you should do? What is the appropriate response? You can snap. You may have heard of people snapping at these events. You can say, yeah. You can say, oh, I like that. You can say word. Say basically whatever you feel. Nothing too crazy so that we don't get distracted and are like, oh my gosh, what are they saying? What are they saying? But we really do want you guys to participate. So, with that said, I think the only other thing to do is to bring up our first poet for you guys. Are you guys ready? How are you gonna? You got it. Some smart girls in this crowd. I'm so excited. I see you. I got you. All right, so this first poem is going to be by Sean, and it's called Gillion. Please welcome Sean to the stage.
Gillion never could sit still in class. Feet tapping, fingers snapping, rhythms 1, 2, shoulders always bouncing, her head wants to groove. But the figures always stood stock still against the chalkboard. They were slick and silent and so slippery, her mind slid and skated right off them. She loved to be called to the front, because it meant she could finally lift out of her chair and float forward, toes flirting with the floorboards. But once she was there, she could never remember what it was she was supposed to be doing. The chalk shook against the board, out of rhythm. Spell castle, add 3 to 5, define freedom. But she could never get it right on the first try, or on the second, until she had to sit down, Gillion. The teachers tried to help her, but she made the others nervous, added agitation to the atmosphere, couldn't stop tapping, drove teachers to distraction, couldn't pass the first grade or the second, started getting nervous. This made the tapping worse. Now it always came out of rhythm, so they had her fold her hands. Couldn't stop, hold the desk, couldn't stop, hold herself, but she would vibrate like a tuning fork, squirming out of the teacher's straitjacket stare. She never stopped moving. She's sick, the principal told her mother. So her mother took her to one of those men with glasses who know how to fix you, can put you in a shiny little cage for those mice in your mind, can straighten your brainstem and snap it back to your spine, can always find a solution. Barely even looked at her, just asked her mother what was wrong with her, how long had she had this problem, and Gillion tried to sit on her hands, but she couldn't stop moving. Finally, the man said he needed to talk to her mother alone, and as he walked out, he turned on the radio and closed the door behind him and turned to Gillion's mother and said, "Watch." And they watched that little glass window as the music crept along the desk and spilled off the edges and lifted Gillion right out of her chair. She turned slowly and raised her arms to cradle every bar as she spun. The arpeggios wiped all the dust out of her mind. Decades passed and thunderstorms crashed within her and wiped all the nervousness out. She turned as if she knew what she was supposed to be doing, defined freedom with the lines of her elbows, traced the turrets of castles from an architect's prayer, and knew with every breath that 3 and 5 is just 8. Gillion never could sit still in dance class, feet tapping, fingers snapping rhythms, 1, 2, shoulders always bouncing, and her head would groove. She loved to be called to the mirror to imitate every move, and more often than not, got it exactly right on the first try. Gillion never could sit still, period. The subway ride to the recital was its own performance. Each mile was 5,000 dance steps. She washed her hands in time, brushed her teeth like an opera when she needed to think. She moved a little more because she knew that thinking was moving, moving was living. Each step was only breathing, each pirouette just a pulse. At 90 years old, Gillion never could sit still in her hospital bed. Feet tapping, fingers snapping rhythms, 1, 2, shoulders always bouncing and her head would groove. The doctors smiled like they heard music, said, "She's a famous dancer." And even to the very end, she never stopped moving. Leapt up to meet the angel of death in the doorway, grabbed him by the waist, and waltzed away into the golden morning.
Wow, you guys are really getting the hang of slam already. I heard so many snaps. I was so pleased. You guys are so awake for like 9 in the morning. I'm really impressed. So to take audience participation one step further, this is something we do at our slams occasionally. We're going to get you guys to write a poem during the slam. So I'm going to pass this around. I've written one line, and what is going to happen is everybody who gets the notepad is just going to add a line to the poem. You've already been inspired by Sean, so just let the line that you see before yours inspire you and write whatever you want. So we're going to see how far this goes, and then at the end of the performance, we're going to get one of you to come up if anybody wants to. We'll see how it goes. Oh, she wants to. All right, I'm looking for you at the end. In the meantime, we're going to have more poetry, obviously, and our next poet is going to be David.
Hey guys, so I'll have 2 poems for you guys today, and they're both about truths that I think sometimes get hidden by more noticeable truths, and they both happen to be about love. So the first one is about how good choice. So the first one is about how you can break up with someone but still care about them. I've never been sure I've loved a girlfriend until right before the end. Because when your best interests and her best interests fit together like interlaced fingers or a cupped hand over a rib cage, you can't imagine you'd ever get to a place where you're systematically sacrificing your happiness at the altar of what you pray is her well-being because you can't conceive of a world in which you don't care for her. When your smiles are indivisible, so a relationship is in its prime, there's nothing acidic, it's not basic, but it's not complicated. So there's no need to litmus test love. But when incongruities like frictions have slowed down your collective laughter, don't imagine you can avoid pain by denying love of its confirmation. You may be right with your Declaration of Independence to choose liberty and the pursuit of happiness, but the anger, confusion, and doubt in her voice sound a lot like death, or at least the death of an idea. It'll be awkward the way violence is outside of movies, where it can't be fit to music because there's no synchrony to harm. Alternatingly numbing and excruciating, it will hurt like only hurting another person can. In the physics of relationships, every pain has an equal, if different, pain in the opposite partner. This is true especially when everything's coming undone. I'm not saying we're coming undone. Sometimes I do worry I have nothing left I'm willing to sacrifice for love. Sometimes I worry our frictions have burned through laughter, or loving even my silence raw. As a man who if nothing else needs his silence, I'm not sure if I need to run. And if I do, if I'm selfish because I couldn't be selfless, I still hope we can be friends. And by that, I mean, I still can't imagine a world in which I don't care for you.